On this episode of ResiWeek, we wrap up ISE 2020. Resideo announce 3, 2, 1. On this episode of ResiWeek, we wrap up ISE 2020. Resideo acquires Herman Pro AV, and Sony rehires Jeff Goldstein. All this and more on this episode of ResiWeek.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
This is ResiWeek, episode 211, Joe's cell phone.
Support for AVNation is brought to you by Chief, the global leader in commercial AV mounting solutions, and by
Atlona, the go-to provider for AV signal distribution and control in corporate, higher education, and residential spaces.
Welcome to ResiWeek. This is your weekly roundup of all the latest news and stories for the residential AV industry. I'm your host, Matt D. Scott for AVNation.tv. And this week, we are pleased to be joined by Jason Griffin. He is the director of partner development at One Vision Resources. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great, Matt. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. Then we have Josh Willis. He is the president at Portal.io. How are you?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for sending that email. And last but not least, we have Joe Whitaker. He is the CEO of Thoughtful Integrations. What's up, Joey?
Dude, glad to be back on the show.
It's been a while, man. It's actually
weeks.
been a minute for all three of you.
It's been like months. Yeah.
I know. It's crazy. The reason we've been so busy and we haven't had time to hang out is because the last month or so, I have been preparing for ISE, which none of you prepared for because you didn't go. But that doesn't mean we're not going to talk about it. So, gentlemen, this is a good wrap-up that comes to us from CE Pro and Arlen Schweger. He goes around the rye in essentially 30 tweets that he sent out from the show. If you missed it or somehow managed to be on any part of social media and not see the drama and the fun that surrounded ISE this year, there was, of course, a massive virus out of China that caused all kinds of drama there. There was weather that hit essentially Western Europe as well as the UK. It got me across the ocean in like 6 hours instead of the normal 7, which was fantastic. There were booth concerns. There were dancing robots that caused outrage, all kinds of stuff. So, Jason, let me kick this off with you. And again, none of you were there, so this is going to be very entertaining. But as someone who wasn't there, when you saw the coverage, when you kind of followed along, because this is a big show for our channel, did you find that all of the drama affected the outcome of the show in anything that you were able to perceive?
I would say no, not anything that I was able to perceive. I think for me, as a US-based residential integrator, ISE's always been a little bit of a difficult show to follow from afar. I was lucky enough to go over there once a couple of years ago and really enjoyed it, but I was there just that one time. And I think, this year was no exception. There's so much going on at ISE between Pro AV and commercial and residential that following it from afar can be a little bit of a challenge. But, everything I took away from it seemed like it was another great show. There was, in this story that you alluded to, around the rye in 30 tweets, I think it was a great roundup. Seems to be a lot of movement continuing. Noticed a lot of the big players in the residential side: Crestron, Snap AV, Nortec, Savant, of course, Z-Wave, all had really strong showings. And so it appears to have been another successful show. I know that attendance counts, they expect to be down this year for the reasons you cited.
Way down,
in the
30,000 down.
Yeah. And so I did hear from people who were there that they could feel that. They could feel that on the show, that it was a little bit more lightly attended. But, from everything I could tell, it seems like it was another great show. The people I've talked to saw a lot of cool stuff there. And it looks like all of these companies are continuing to use it as a great opportunity to, continue to showcase their innovation.
Very good. And yes, they were down approximately 30,000 people, from last year. And while that was disappointing, it was excellent as far as navigating the show. It was a dream to get around this year. Josh, again, following it from this side of the pond, normally at ISE, we see a lot of big releases. We see a lot of big product releases. We're starting to, the last couple of years, see the same trend that we're noticing at Expo and even Infocom for that matter, where it's incremental release, right? We're seeing this incremental growth opposed to these massive chunks when it comes to product. Does that affect your desire to go to shows, to make the investment to do these things when products are upgraded with firmware a lot of times opposed to big flashy boxes?
I think most people don't go to the shows for the new products or the new announcements. I mean, we get new announcements every day. So, the shows are about the relationships. It's about seeing the people at the different companies. It's about seeing what they have new. But look, guys care about what they can actually install and sell, and not necessarily what's coming in 3 months or 6 months or whatever. So it's fun to know the technology that's coming soon, but guys are really there to do business. And so I don't really think that affects it too much.
Very good. Joey, I saved a fun one for you. You and I have talked for, probably 4 or 5 years now about you coming to ISE. It's never really happened. Is the value for residential dealers on the whole, you take your average integrator in North America, is it worth their time and their investment to go to ISE?
Well, yes and no. So since me and you have been talking about this, I haven't went. I personally haven't seen the value for one of several different things. Most of what I do want to see, I'll catch at CEDIA Expo. The last 4 years, I haven't really represented CEDIA in any capacity over at ISE. And then there's all, kind of what you're talking about, incremental product launches, the flashiness of the big announcement, that's been kind of dying at all shows for the last 5 or 6 years. So it's interesting to think of, why me personally didn't go. Value to my business. I could get that at ISE, Infocom, CES, or CEDIA Expo, locally for a lot less of the cost. And then for, a lot of us that have been doing this for a long time, ISE is the international Vegas.
Mm-hmm.
It was cool when we were going, to CES back in our 20s, but we're all pushing on 50 now. It's like, man, Barcelona now has a whole new, vibe to it. Now we got something new and something fresh. It's just like those places we've been to time and time and time again. You were just, talking about the attendance. It's one of those that I'm kind of glad I elected not to go this year. When you take into account 30,000 people down, right? To put that in perspective, that's more than the entire attendance at CEDIA Expo. That's walking into that building, and not only any members or attendees, there's no manufacturers. It would be ghost town. So, person-wise, put that into perspective. But it was very entertaining to watch vicariously through social media from people like Ryan over at SI, shooting pictures out the window of the craziness of the wind, LG not showing up because of the coronavirus. All these things were kind of fascinating in and of that was the final, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You always try to end an event, a final event, like on this super big, exciting high point, and then they just got pounded with the worst uncontrollable luck ever.
Oh, it was exciting. Don't get me wrong.
I mean, you can always plan for bad things to happen. I do not think that in this circumstance there was no way to plan for that just compiled junk that just hit them.
Aside from all of that stuff, I think, Joe, you could probably say if I'm right on this or not, but I suspect that, as a business owner, when you take time out of your schedule to go to a show like this, you can make it worth your time, right? You can figure out a way to make it worth your time. But when it's over there, you're losing a day of travel there. You're losing a day of travel back. I mean, I know when Cedia moved to San Diego, a lot of guys didn't go because that's a long flight to go from the East Coast to the West Coast. And so, I mean, that's really what it comes down to, I think, for most business owners is that's just a huge chunk of time.
I agree. And the last time I went, I think I was gone a total of a week and a half. So, put that into perspective. When you go to Cedia Expo here, your max time might be 4 days with travel, so I mean, it is very, very different. And, the mix of commercial, residential, high-end audio, and how big and huge it is, it does make the logistics of it all a little hard. The show is perfect for over there. If you are, a UK company or an India company, even for that reason, because they're such a concentration of populace. Over there, you can drive, from one country across 3 to 4 countries, and it's like driving across the state of Texas here. So, I mean, it's you have that big centralized populace, which makes shows like this make so much sense. It's like the strip of shows in China.
Hey, thanks for watching the first segment of this week's episode. To catch the entire show, please click the link below or visit AVNation.tv. That's AVNation.tv. I will happily give out your cell phone.
Oh, God.
We'll just give it to Mitchell to post on the page. Is that all right?
There you go.
Yeah, we'll tweet it out with the show.
Yeah, do that.